On a cold morning, Andrew Small approached the entrance of a large business center. He was dressed in simple clothes, dark jeans, an old jacket, and a bit of stubble on his face. But he needed to go inside. Before he could reach the door, the security guard stepped in front of him. "Stop! Where do you think you're going?" the guard said harshly. Andrew looked at him calmly. "I need to enter this office." The guard smirked. "Seriously? This business center?" He looked Andrew up and down and shook his head. "Listen, this place isn't for people like you. Important people work here. Get lost before I call the police." Some passers-by turned to watch the scene, but no one spoke up. Andrew didn't argue. He simply nodded and walked away. But the security guard had no idea that very soon this poor man would return. And when he did, everything would change. 3 months passed. For security guard Dmitry Kolesnikov, nothing had changed. He still stood at the entrance of the business center, judging visitors by their appearance. If someone wore an expensive suit, he greeted them with respect. But if someone looked simple, he didn't hesitate to say, "Do you even know where you are? This place isn't for people like you." He never thought about the man he had thrown out 3 months ago. But soon, he would remember him very well. That morning, a group of important businessmen gathered at the entrance. Among them were top executives and even the owner of the business center. They were having a serious discussion. Dmitry stretched his neck, trying to see who was in the center of attention. And then, his heart stopped. It was the same poor man he had thrown out 3 months ago. But now, he looked completely different. He was wearing an expensive suit, a luxury watch, and speaking confidently with the building's owner. Dmitry couldn't believe his eyes. "Who is he?" he whispered. And within a minute, he got the answer that made his blood run cold. Dmitry stiffened, watching the man he had once thrown out. Just 3 months ago, he rudely dismissed him, treating him like he didn't belong. And now, that same man was standing next to the owner of the business center, speaking with authority. A few minutes later, the group entered the building. Dmitry remained outside, confused. Then, his supervisor, the head of security, approached him. "Get ready. There's going to be a meeting soon," the supervisor said. "What's going on? Who is that man?" Dmitry asked nervously. The supervisor sighed heavily and gave him a serious look. "That's Andrew Small, the new owner of the business center." Dmitry's face went pale. What? The supervisor nodded. "He bought the building. He's our boss now." Dmitry felt his stomach drop. 3 months ago, he had humiliated this man, insulted him, laughed at him. And now, that same man held his future in his hands. At that moment, Dmitry heard a familiar voice behind him. "I see you still work here." Dmitry turned around sharply. Andrew Small was standing right there, his expression calm but unreadable. Dmitry froze, locking eyes with Andrew. 3 months ago, he had treated him like a nobody. Now, this man owned the entire building. Dmitry swallowed hard. He opened his mouth, but the words wouldn't come out. Andrew stepped closer, his gaze steady. "Do you remember me?" Dmitri nodded quickly. Yes, Andrew smirked. Interesting. Do you still judge people by their clothes? Or have you learned something? Dmitri lowered his head, his palms sweating. I'm sorry. Andrew raised an eyebrow. Sorry? Were you sorry 3 months ago? Back then, you were pretty confident about deciding who belongs here and who doesn't. Dmitri said nothing because he knew he had no excuse. Andrew exhaled slowly. Well, I think it's time to make a decision. Dmitri felt his throat go dry. Are you firing me? A tense silence filled the air. Andrew looked at him coldly. And then, after a few moments, he gave an answer that Dmitri would never forget. Dmitri held his breath, waiting for Andrew's response. Andrew studied him for a moment, then let out a small smirk. Fire you? That would be too easy. Dmitri blinked in confusion. What? Andrew crossed his arms. You're going to keep working here. But from now on, your role will be different. Dmitri tensed up. What do you mean? Andrew's expression remained calm but firm. You're no longer a security guard. Starting today, you'll be in charge of customer service. You will greet every guest, assist them, and treat them with respect. Let's see if you can handle that. Dmitri felt his stomach drop. He had always enjoyed the power of deciding who could enter the building. Now, he would have to smile and be polite, even to people he once looked down on. But he understood one thing: this was better than losing his job entirely. He slowly nodded. I understand. I'll do my best. Andrew looked at him carefully, then simply said, "Prove it." And with that, he turned and walked away. Dmitri let out a shaky breath. He realized one thing: life can change in an instant. And if you don't treat people with respect, one day, you might find yourself at their mercy. 1 month later, big changes happened in the business center. Employees noticed that Dmitri had changed. He no longer spoke rudely to visitors. He no longer looked down on people based on their appearance. And at the entrance, a new sign was placed: every person deserves respect. Because Dmitri finally understood, it's not clothes that define a person, it's their actions.